The year is 1347. Within the hallowed walls of the St. Martin Benedictine Monastery in France, life unfolds with the rhythmic precision of the monastic hours. Here, amidst the flickering candlelight and the hushed whispers of prayer, knowledge is preserved, or so it seems. Brother Thomas, a scribe for over 20 years, finds solace and purpose in the act of copying texts. Yet, a disquieting thought begins to stir within him. He notices a pattern in the selection of texts, a careful curation that excludes certain voices and perspectives. He stumbles upon fragments of forgotten philosophical treatises, their wisdom deemed heretical by the Church. Questions arise in his mind. Why are these ideas suppressed? What truths do they contain that the Church fears? His doubts grow as he considers the implications. Is the monastery truly a bastion of knowledge, or merely a tool for preserving a specific ideology? Unbeknownst to Brother Thomas, Sister Agnes tends to the monastery's medicinal herb garden. She knows the healing properties of plants and the benefits of the ancient texts that are hidden in the monastery. He cautiously shares his concerns with Sister Agnes, seeking her counsel and wisdom. She, too, has observed the subtle censorship at play within the monastery walls. Meanwhile, Lady Eleanor de Valois, a noblewoman known for her sharp intellect and insatiable curiosity, visits the monastery library. She is searching for something more than the sanctioned texts. She seeks out Brother Thomas, drawn to his reputation for scholarly dedication. She hints at her desire to access forbidden knowledge, ancient remedies, and philosophical insights suppressed by the Church. He cautiously agrees to help her, driven by his own growing doubts and a desire to unlock the secrets hidden within the monastery's archives. He shows her hidden ancient remedies and medical treatises, not knowing that these secrets are more dangerous than he could imagine. In the nearby feudal estate, Lord Bartholomew, a man of ambition and ruthless pragmatism, reigns supreme. He sees knowledge as a tool and wields censorship as a weapon to maintain his political control and social order. Lord Bartholomew is alerted to the clandestine activities within the monastery, perceiving it as a potential threat to his authority. He begins to gather intelligence, determined to suppress any dissenting voices or dangerous ideas that might undermine his power. As the shadows lengthen, Brother Thomas knows that his actions have not gone unnoticed. He understands that the pursuit of knowledge comes at a price, and that the secrets he seeks to preserve may ignite a conflict that will engulf the monastery and the world beyond. Lady Eleanor de Valois possessed a mind as restless as the wind. Dissatisfied with the limited scope of knowledge deemed appropriate for a woman of her station, she sought enlightenment beyond the confines of courtly life. The whispers of ancient texts, of forgotten wisdom, drew her towards the isolated monastery of St. Martin. Brother Thomas, amidst the silent industry of the scriptorium, felt a kindred spirit in the pursuit of knowledge. Yet, he harbored a growing unease about the texts deemed worthy of preservation. The faces of the past, the arguments, debates, and discoveries seemed to grow fainter by the day. Eleanor, after being granted an audience with the abbot, presented her request with carefully chosen words. She spoke of her desire to study the natural world, of her interest in medicine and philosophy, concealing her true intention to seek out texts deemed heretical or dangerous. The abbot, sensing her genuine thirst for knowledge, entrusted Brother Thomas to guide Lady Eleanor through the labyrinthine library. Thomas, though wary, recognized in her eyes a hunger similar to his own, a yearning for truths hidden beneath layers of dogma and fear. Alina focused her inquiries on texts related to medicine, probing Brother Thomas about ancient remedies and theories of the human body. She cleverly steered the conversation towards the works of Galen and Hippocrates, subtly hinting at her desire to access even more obscure sources. Brother Thomas, torn between his vows and his conscience, eventually relented. He led Alina to a hidden alcove, concealed behind a dusty tapestry, where forbidden texts lay dormant, their knowledge suppressed by fear and prejudice. Alina's eyes widened as she gazed upon the forbidden books. There were the writings of Avicenna, detailing medical procedures that were considered heretical by the Church, texts on natural philosophy that challenged the established order, and even fragments of ancient pagan wisdom. "These texts are dangerous, Lady Alina," Brother Thomas warned, his voice barely above a whisper. "Possession of such knowledge could bring grave consequences, not only for you but for all of us within these walls." Alina, undeterred, dismissed his concerns. "Knowledge is never dangerous, Brother Thomas," she countered, her eyes blazing with conviction. "It is ignorance that breeds fear and suffering, and in these dark times we need all the knowledge we can find." Meanwhile, Lord Bartholomew's network of spies was ever vigilant. He received word of Lady Alina's extended visits to the monastery and her unusual interest in the library. Suspicion gnawed at him, and he ordered a closer watch on her movements. Under the cover of darkness, Alina transcribed passages from the forbidden texts, painstakingly copying remedies and medical observations. She knew that possessing this knowledge was a risk, but the potential to alleviate suffering during the plague outweighed her fear. As Alina departed from the monastery, Brother Thomas watched her go, a knot of anxiety tightening in his stomach. He had opened a door to knowledge, but he knew that the path ahead was fraught with peril, and the consequences of their actions remained uncertain. Lord Bartholomew was a man forged in the crucible of power. He saw his land not as a haven for his people, but as a source of strength, a means to his own aggrandizement. His rule was absolute, and dissent was met with swift and brutal justice. He believed unquestioning obedience was the bedrock of stability. A villager named Jean, accused of whispering heresies against the church, was brought before Lord Bartholomew. The charges were vague, the evidence circumstantial, yet the verdict was predetermined. Bartholomew used such accusations to terrify the populace. "This man," Lord Bartholomew declared, his voice resonating with power, "has sown seeds of doubt and discontent. Let this be a lesson to all who question the divinely ordained order." The words hung heavy in the air. The punishment was swift and brutal. Jean was tied to a stake, a symbol of his defiance against both the church and the Lord. His alleged heresy was never truly defined, but the spectacle served its purpose, to instill fear and obedience. The flames licked at the wood, then at Jean himself. His screams, though heart-wrenching, were quickly extinguished. The lesson was clear. Questioning authority, be it divine or secular, would be met with agonizing consequences. Back in his castle, Lord Bartholomew felt no remorse. For him, Jean was simply a means to an end, a necessary sacrifice to maintain order. He believed that fear was the most effective tool for governance. He met in secret with Father Michael, a corrupt priest who conveniently overlooked Bartholomew's transgressions in exchange for wealth and power. Together, they reinforced the narrative that suited their own ambitions. "The people are restless, Bartholomew," Father Michael slurred, his words thick with wine. "They need to be reminded of their place. The church must reinforce its teachings, and you must reinforce the church." Bartholomew merely nodded, already plotting his next move. A new decree was announced. All gatherings, save for sanctioned church services, were forbidden. Books and scrolls were to be surrendered for inspection. Any dissenting voices would be silenced permanently. Fear spread like wildfire. Yet, even in the face of such oppression, embers of defiance remained. Whispers of resistance began to circulate, fueled by the very knowledge Bartholomew sought to suppress. Lord Bartholomew's gaze often drifted towards the monastery. He knew that knowledge was power, and he suspected that the monks held secrets that could undermine his authority. He vowed to bring them to heel. "Control," he muttered, his voice barely audible above the wind, "is the only truth." But even he could not foresee the storm of knowledge and plague that was about to break upon his carefully constructed world. The air in St. Martin, once thick with the scent of beeswax and parchment, now carried a different odor, a subtle metallic tang of fear. Whispers had begun, carried on the wind like the spores of a noxious weed. Pestilence, they called it. A sickness sweeping across the land, leaving only death in its wake. The village was gripped by a palpable dread. Each cough, each fever was now viewed with suspicion and terror. Trade slowed to a trickle. Laughter had vanished, replaced by hushed, fearful murmurs. The world felt poised on the precipice of an abyss. Lord Bartholomew, ever watchful, sensed the growing unease. He understood the power of fear and how easily it could be manipulated. He saw opportunity amidst the chaos, a chance to tighten his grip on the land and its people. Sister Agnes, with her gentle heart, moved among the sick, offering what comfort she could. She knew that prayer alone could not stem the tide of illness, but it was all she had to offer. Lady Eleanor, driven by her thirst for knowledge, pored over ancient medical texts, searching for any clue, any remedy that might offer salvation. The plague was not just a disease. It was a test of knowledge, a challenge to the limits of human understanding. Within the monastery walls, the church responded with fervent prayer. The plague, they declared, was a punishment from God, a consequence of human sin. Only through repentance and devotion could salvation be found. Lord Bartholomew, seizing the opportunity, addressed his people. He spoke of the need for order, for obedience. He instituted strict quarantines, enforced by his guards. Fear was his weapon, and he wielded it with ruthless precision. Brother Thomas witnessed the growing despair. The monastery's graveyard expanded daily, filled with the bodies of the young and old, the pious and the sinners. He began to question the church's pronouncements, the easy answers that offered little comfort. Eleanor, undeterred by the church's pronouncements, continued her research. She experimented with herbs and ancient remedies, driven by a desperate hope that knowledge, not prayer alone, could offer a path to survival. Religious hysteria swept through the land. Groups of flagellants roamed from town to town, whipping themselves in public displays of penance, believing that their suffering would appease God and end the plague. The line between faith and fanaticism blurred. Lord Bartholomew, fueled by superstition and a desire to maintain control, ordered the burning of books deemed heretical or dangerous. Knowledge, he believed, was a threat to order, a source of dissent that could undermine his authority. Brother Thomas watched the flames consume the books, a sense of dread settling in his heart. He knew that the plague was not just a physical affliction. It was a disease of the mind, a darkness that threatened to extinguish the light of knowledge and reason. The whispers of pestilence had become a deafening roar. The first signs were subtle, almost easy to dismiss. A cough here, a fever there. But soon the swellings appeared, the buboes, grotesquely swollen and black in the groin and armpits. The Black Death had arrived, and its shadow stretched long and dark across the land. The village became a charnel house. Homes stood empty, their inhabitants claimed by the pestilence. The living were too few to bury the dead, and the stench of decay permeated the air, a constant reminder of mortality. Lord Bartholomew, ever the pragmatist, attempted to maintain order. He imposed quarantines, forbade gatherings, and dispatched guards to enforce his decrees. But even his authority was strained by the sheer scale of the devastation. Within the monastery walls, Brother Thomas and his fellow monks ministered to the sick and dying. They offered what comfort they could, prayers, blessings, and the meager medical knowledge they possessed. Sister Agnes, her youthful face aged beyond its years, helped prepare the dead for burial, her heart heavy with grief and fear. The sheer number of corpses was overwhelming, a constant reminder of the plague's relentless grip. Eleanor, driven by a fierce determination, pored over ancient texts, searching for any mention of remedies or preventative measures. The old knowledge, suppressed for so long, might hold the key to survival. Fear fueled Lord Bartholomew's resolve. He tightened his grip on the village, suspecting every cough, every whispered complaint as a potential spark of rebellion. The church, facing dwindling numbers in the clergy, used the plague as evidence of divine wrath, urging repentance and obedience. Processions snaked through the streets, a desperate plea for divine intervention. Eleanor, armed with her newfound knowledge, offered practical assistance. She prepared herbal remedies, cleaned wounds, and shared what she had learned about hygiene and sanitation, often facing skepticism and resistance. Lord Bartholomew knew that the plague was not just a medical crisis, it was a challenge to his authority. The social order was fracturing, and he would stop at nothing to maintain control. Despite the chaos, Brother Thomas continued his work, meticulously copying texts, preserving knowledge for a future that seemed increasingly uncertain. He hoped that even in the darkest of times, the light of learning could endure. As the plague raged, unlikely alliances were forged in the face of shared suffering. Eleanor and Sister Agnes, bound by their compassion and their commitment to helping others, worked tirelessly, offering a glimmer of hope in a world consumed by darkness. Days turned into weeks as Brother Thomas meticulously searched the library. The whispers of the forbidden texts had become a constant hum in his mind. Finally, guided by a faded inscription and Sister Agnes's keen observation, he found it, a loose flagstone hidden behind a towering shelf of theological treatises. Sister Agnes, ever the cautious one, held a flickering candle, casting long, dancing shadows across the ancient stones. The air hung heavy with the scent of dust and secrets. A narrow passage descended into darkness. With a shared glance, they descended. The passage was damp and cold, the silence broken only by the echo of their footsteps. A sense of foreboding settled upon them, a feeling that they were crossing a threshold into forbidden territory. The chamber was small and cramped, but it held a treasure trove of forgotten knowledge. Books lined the walls, their spines cracked and faded, their pages brittle with age. It was a repository of ideas deemed too dangerous for the light of day. Brother Thomas carefully lifted a large, leather-bound volume. The script was unfamiliar, the language a blend of Latin and something older, more arcane. He recognized fragments of ancient Greek philosophy, interwoven with forbidden medical knowledge. Sister Agnes, with her knowledge of herbs and healing, recognized diagrams of the human body and descriptions of remedies long forgotten. She whispered of treatments for ailments that now ravaged the countryside, remedies that could save lives. As Brother Thomas delved deeper into the texts, he began to understand why they had been hidden. They challenged the Church's authority, questioned the nature of divine right, and proposed alternative explanations for the world around them. He read aloud, his voice barely a whisper, sharing the forbidden knowledge with Sister Agnes. She listened intently, her brow furrowed in thought. The implications were profound, the potential consequences terrifying. The text spoke of the body as a complex machine, governed by natural laws rather than divine intervention. It detailed surgical procedures and herbal remedies that challenged the Church's reliance on prayer and penance as the sole means of healing. Brother Thomas felt a growing sense of responsibility. This knowledge, though dangerous, could offer solace and healing to a world ravaged by disease and ignorance. He looked at Sister Agnes, his eyes filled with a newfound determination. "We cannot keep this hidden," he said, his voice firm. "Too many are suffering. This knowledge, it is a gift, a responsibility." Sister Agnes nodded, her fear tempered by a growing sense of resolve. She knew the risks, but she also saw the potential for good. In the flickering candlelight, a silent pact formed between them. They were no longer just a scribe and a nun. They were guardians of forbidden knowledge, entrusted with a dangerous secret that could change the course of history or condemn them to a terrible fate. The plague tightened its grip. Eleanor, abandoning her noble comforts, plunged into the heart of the suffering. Armed with knowledge gleaned from ancient texts and her own garden of herbs, she moved from hovel to hovel, a beacon of practical aid against the tide of despair. Eleanor brewed feverfew tea to break fevers and applied poultices of willow bark to ease aches. She knew these remedies were not cures, but they offered comfort and, in some cases, staved off death long enough for the body to fight back. Lord Bartholomew watched Eleanor's efforts with a critical eye. He valued order and control, and while her actions stemmed the panic somewhat, they also challenged his authority. He preferred the familiar methods of prayer and penance to quell the plague, methods that reinforced his divinely ordained rule. A clash was inevitable. The local priest, a man of unwavering faith but limited knowledge, accused Eleanor of dabbling in witchcraft. He saw her herbal remedies as a challenge to God's will, a dangerous deviation from prayer and repentance. The sheer scale of death overwhelmed Eleanor. The mass graves grew larger each day, a testament to the plague's indiscriminate cruelty and the inadequacy of both faith and medicine. She realized that knowledge, even when applied with the best intentions, could only do so much against such a force. Desperate, Eleanor sought out Brother Thomas. She confided in him her struggles, her doubts, and her fears that the Church's dogmatic approach was hindering efforts to combat the plague. Thomas, in turn, shared his own unease with the selective nature of the monastery's knowledge. Sister Agnes, ever observant and resourceful, cultivated a small garden within the monastery walls. She understood the healing power of herbs and quietly supported Eleanor's endeavors, providing her with rare and potent ingredients. Eleanor, guided by her knowledge and aided by Agnes's herbs, continued to experiment, trying different combinations and dosages. She learned to trust her instincts, relying on observation and experience to guide her actions. Lord Bartholomew, pressured by the priest and witnessing Eleanor's growing influence, issued a decree. Her remedies were to be inspected, her practices monitored. He walked a fine line between acknowledging her help and asserting his authority, driven by the fear of losing control. Alina refused to be intimidated. She continued her work, her determination fueled by the suffering she witnessed. She knew that lives depended on her actions, and she would not let fear or prejudice stand in her way. Brother Thomas, witnessing the escalating tension, warned Alina about Bartholomew's growing suspicion. He urged her to be cautious, to protect herself and her knowledge. He knew that the battle for truth was far from over. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the ravaged landscape, Alina knew that the fight for knowledge, for compassion, and for the lives of her people was far from over. The plague raged on, and with it, the struggle between ignorance and enlightenment, control and freedom. Rumors, like the rats that infested the village, spread quickly. Lord Bartholomew heard whispers from his informants about strange activities at the monastery, of Brother Thomas's unusual interest in ancient texts, and of a forbidden book. The thought of dissent brewing under his nose enraged him. The messenger confirmed Bartholomew's suspicions. "My lord," the young man stammered, "there are tales of Brother Thomas spending long hours in the restricted section of the library. Some speak of a heretical text, one that challenges the very foundations of our faith." Bartholomew's control snapped. The idea of his authority being undermined, especially during the chaos of the plague, was intolerable. "Heresy," he roared. "In my land this cannot stand." He immediately dispatched his guards to the monastery with orders to investigate and seize any forbidden texts. He had to know the extent of the perceived threat and put a stop to it before it could fester. Unaware of the impending storm, Brother Thomas continued his work. He felt a growing sense of urgency, a conviction that the knowledge contained in the forbidden text could offer some solace, some understanding in these dark times. Sister Agnes, ever vigilant, felt a growing unease. She had seen the increasing scrutiny from the outside, the nervous glances of the other monks. "Brother Thomas," she whispered, "we must be careful. Something feels amiss." The sudden intrusion shattered the quiet of the scriptorium. Lord Bartholomew's men stormed in, their armor clanking, their presence a stark violation of the monastery's sanctity. "In the name of Lord Bartholomew," the lead guard bellowed, "we are here to seize any forbidden texts. Surrender them now." Thomas stood his ground, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew what this book meant, what it could offer. News of the intrusion reached Lady Alina swiftly. Knowing the value of the texts and the danger Thomas faced, she rode to the monastery, her heart filled with dread. The guard, stronger and more ruthless, pried the book from Thomas's grasp. Sister Agnes tried to intervene but was shoved aside, landing heavily on the stone floor. Alina arrived just as the guard seized the book. "What is the meaning of this outrage?" she demanded, her voice cutting through the chaos. "By whose authority do you desecrate this holy place?" The guard merely sneered, his loyalty lying with Lord Bartholomew, not with the church or its allies. With the forbidden text secured, the guards departed, leaving behind a scene of devastation and fear. The monastery, once a haven of knowledge, now felt like a prison. The Lord's wrath had descended, and the fate of the book and of those who sought its wisdom hung precariously in the balance. The moon hung like a skeletal fingernail in the sky as Lord Bartholomew approached the monastery. His heart was hardened, his resolve unbreakable. He knew what had to be done to protect his people, even if it meant desecrating sacred ground. Inside the monastery, Brother Thomas knelt in prayer, unaware of the impending storm. He sought guidance, a sign that he was doing the right thing by seeking forbidden knowledge. The weight of the text and the plague bore down upon him. Sister Agnes, ever vigilant, saw them first. The glint of steel in the moonlight sent a chill through her. She knew this was no friendly visit. "Open in the name of the Lord," Bartholomew roared, his voice cracking with fury. "I know what you are hiding. Resist and face the consequences." Brother Thomas knew this moment would come. He gripped the forbidden text tightly, his heart pounding in his chest. He had to protect this knowledge, even if it cost him his life. The gates gave way with a deafening crash. Bartholomew's men flooded the courtyard, their rough voices and clanging armor shattering the monastery's peace. Panic seized the monks, who scattered like frightened birds. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the darkness. Lady Alina, alerted to the raid, arrived with her own guards. Her face was set in a mask of fury as she surveyed the scene. "Alina, what is the meaning of this interference?" Bartholomew roared, his voice laced with incredulity. "Stand aside. This is a matter of state security." "Security or suppression?" Alina retorted, her voice ringing with defiance. "These monks have done nothing wrong. You are terrorizing innocent men in your quest for control." Brother Thomas stepped forward, clutching the forbidden text. "This is what you seek, Lord Bartholomew," he said, his voice trembling but firm. "Knowledge. Is knowledge a crime?" Bartholomew's men surged forward, intent on seizing Brother Thomas and the book. The courtyard erupted into chaos as Alina's guards clashed with the soldiers, the sounds of steel and screams filling the night air. In the midst of the fray, Sister Agnes was caught in the crossfire. Fear etched itself on her face as she realized the devastating consequences of their quest for knowledge, her hopes for enlightenment seemingly extinguished by the brutal reality of power. The scriptorium, once a sanctuary of quiet contemplation, now echoed with the heavy breathing of men and the rustling of parchment. Brother Thomas, his heart pounding against his ribs, clutched the forbidden text to his chest, a fragile shield against the storm brewing around him. Lord Bartholomew's voice, a low growl, shattered the silence. "That book, it is poison. It will sow discord and rebellion. Give it to me, monk, and perhaps I will be lenient." Lady Alina stepped forward, her voice ringing with defiance. "This book holds knowledge, Bartholomew, knowledge that could save lives. You would condemn us all to ignorance and death." Sister Agnes stood silently beside Brother Thomas, her presence a quiet testament to her unwavering belief in the power of knowledge, even in the face of such overwhelming opposition. Bartholomew, his patience exhausted, gestured curtly to his guards. "Take the book, and silence anyone who dares to interfere." Chaos erupted. The guards, clad in steel, moved with brutal efficiency. The monks, unprepared for violence, offered only token resistance. Brother Thomas, caught in the melee, fought to protect the manuscript, its pages now stained with the sweat and blood of desperation. Lord Bartholomew watched with detached interest as his men wrestled the book from Brother Thomas's grasp. He felt no remorse, no regret. Only the cold satisfaction of control reasserted. Alina confronted him, her voice laced with scorn. "You may destroy the book, Bartholomew, but you cannot destroy the ideas it contains. They will live on, whispered in the shadows, until they ignite a fire you cannot control." Bartholomew merely scoffed, dismissing her words as the fanciful ravings of a woman. He turned and strode out of the scriptorium, the forbidden text clutched tightly in his hand. Brother Thomas knelt amidst the scattered parchments, his spirit broken. Had he been a fool to believe that knowledge could triumph over power? Was it all in vain? Sister Agnes placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Do not despair, Brother Thomas. The seed has been planted. Even if this book is lost, the ideas it contained will find their way into the light. Knowledge, like truth, cannot be extinguished. The sun set, casting long shadows across the plague-ravaged land. The fate of the forbidden text remained uncertain, a symbol of the ongoing struggle between knowledge and control. The Black Death raged on, a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the enduring power of ignorance. But even in the darkest of times, the embers of hope and the pursuit of truth flickered, waiting for the moment to ignite once more.